I call to order the Lynchburg Planning Commission meeting for Wednesday, December 14th, 2022. And our first order of business is the approval of the November 9th minutes. So anybody have any comments or any additions to this?
Move to accept.
Second.
Okay. All right. Going to vote to accept. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right. Our next order of business is to hold a public hearing regarding the consideration of adopting the Lynchburg Parks and Recreation Master Plan as part of the city's comprehensive plan of 2013 to 2030. The function of the master plan is to assess the city of Lynchburg's public parks and recreation system and provide recommendations to enhance services across the community over the next decade. The plan provides recommendations for existing parks and recreation facilities, programming, and administration in the community with the goal of maximizing and improving the efficiency of service delivery. The master plan is a working and flexible document that provides guidance by establishing a clear vision for the future as well as goals and objectives regarding Lynchburg's park system. This will serve as a strategic action plan to help guide future programs, parks, and recreational capital improvement projects. The plan includes facility benchmarking, level of service breakdown, park service gap analysis, or park deserts, connectivity analysis, recreation programming evaluation, cost recovery and subsidy allocation study, health equity recommendations, and financial analysis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As you know, we will be holding a public hearing to consider adoption of the Parks and Rec Master Plan as part of the city's comprehensive plan today. With us, we have Jenny Jones, our Director of Parks and Recreation, and I'll invite her to come on up to the podium and tell you about this huge effort that they have been working on and are bringing to you today.
Thank you, Rachel. Chairman Rogers, Vice Chair Johnson, members of the Planning Commission, I first off want to introduce my lead team, Parks and Rec lead team. So if you don't mind giving a hand wave when I get to you, we have Darius Slaughter, who is the acting Lynchburg Community Market Manager. We have Shantae Jefferson, who is our acting Neighborhood Center Manager. We have John Ramsey, who is our Support Service Manager. Maggie Mace, who's our Recreation Service Manager, and Chris Higgins, who's our Park Service Manager. He's going to be a little late. And also I wanted to recognize our recently passed Neighborhood Center Manager, Charlotte Lester, who also contributed to the plan. Anyway, on May 25th, 2021, I gave a presentation to this commission. It was online, and it was regarding the Lynchburg Parks and Recreation Department Needs Assessment Project. In the presentation, I covered the scope of work, preliminary results of community engagement, study methodology, and expected deliverables. To refresh your memory, the last time the Park and Rec Department conducted a needs assessment and comprehensive master plan was 24 years ago. The Park and Rec Department proposed this current needs assessment, and the project was approved by City Council and funded by City Council in the 2021 capital improvement project budget. The needs assessment study has led to this comprehensive park master plan, an all-encompassing look at the department from our recreation program offerings to our fees to park maintenance to the organizational structure to the build out of the capital improvement plan for the next 10 years. To briefly recap, the community engagement process has been incredibly successful. City Council interviews, as well as interviews with city leaders and key staff, along with stakeholder meetings and focus group interviews, had over a 90% attendance rate. Those were invites. The 23 pop-ups hosted by the consultants and the Lynchburg Parks and Rec Department had over 900 participants. The project website had close to 2,000 unduplicated participants. There were thousands more that perused the website but did not log in. In the end, the project will have close to 4,000 citizens directly engaging on the parks and recreation needs in Lynchburg. The consultants have used this extraordinary community engagement feedback, as well as benchmarking, as Mr. Rogers mentioned, population-based and access-based level of service analysis, site evaluations, gap analysis, connectivity analysis, and best practice research to create the recommendations found in the Lynchburg Parks and Recreation Master Plan. And we actually have a copy to hand you when this is all over with. You should have it digitally, though. This plan will be used as a visionary framework for long-term use and development. Some recommendations may or may not be considered and implemented. This is based on real-world conditions and other applicable factors. Now, I'd like to introduce the project manager, Josh Gulick from Lowe's Design, who will discuss their findings and recommendations. Josh Gulick.
All right. Thank you, Jenny. I really appreciate the kind introduction. Thank you for allowing me to present tonight. Are we able to, can you guys see the presentation up there? Or?
Yeah, they've
Okay. All right. So I'm going to walk through just very briefly. This is 2 years worth of work, hard work that I'm going to try and condense and make exciting and poignant for you tonight. We have our reports that we're going to hand out, and there's a lot of text that is going to support everything I'm kind of talking about high level tonight. But there's been a lot of effort, so I'm going to do the best I can to give you a very high level yet thorough presentation this evening. So thank you in advance for bearing with me. All right, so the project team, we have a great history with Parks and Rec. We love Parks and Rec. We've been in business for 40 years, and one of our staples has always been large-scale, comprehensive Parks and Rec master plans. And we have, over the years, done hundreds of these master plans. We've gained a methodology, so it's very logical, turning a very large and complex situation into a logical next steps. And the way we do that is we use national trends, national data. We use a local analysis, which we go very deep, including your public engagement and analysis of your demographics and everything that goes into that. And then we use our experience. The hundreds of master plans tell us how we can combine these best, how we take these and boil them down into action steps for the next level. So everyone, we really believe, understands the benefit of Parks and Rec, from wellness to mental health to creating cooler temperatures in your cities. There's numerous benefits to having Parks and Rec and a plan for Parks and Rec in your community. The basis, when you boil this down, what we're really trying to do is encourage the benefits of Parks and Rec in an equitable fashion for a level of service for access to these Parks and Rec throughout your community. That's really what we're trying to do and make a plan for the future for providing those benefits across. So what is a master plan? So we talked a little bit about how we do it, but the master plan is really that plan for the future for Parks and Rec. Just like you have city zoning and city planning and land use plans, you've got to have an opportunity for your level of service for Parks and Rec to be spread throughout your communities. We tend to see communities that do not have these plans. They don't have a broad level of service within their communities because it is kind of, we've got money, let's put it into this. It's never that broader thing. With this Parks and Rec master plan, you can have those conversations. You can start talking to different developers who come in about different areas of town and what the need is there, and start having those public-private partnerships that you wouldn't, and it's just a conversation that you wouldn't have been able to have without a plan. So again, the first thing that we do is we come in and evaluate the community. We really look at the age is part of it. Race and ethnicity is also part of our study. Income is also part of it. The city of Lynchburg has a very young population. That's mostly due to the many colleges and universities around. You guys have a very diverse community. And what we've learned through studying your community is that you have a great opportunity for access to exercise options, but interestingly, you also have a high inactivity rate and a high obesity rate, which means there are barriers for certain individuals to gain access to these great recreation facilities. So that's something that we really wanted to explore, and that told us, lean on your study, lean on those national examples to really find out how you can mitigate that. So the next step, as our evaluation, was really a robust public engagement. We have our Parks Director Jenny to thank for the amount of public engagement that was done for this project. We've done, like I said, hundreds of these, and this is by far the most public engagement that I've seen. And I just hats off. Yes, and everyone who manned these stations and gathered public input. It was a awesome effort. It was great. So we had three ways to gather public input. We had the pop-up sessions, which we went to the Dick's Sporting Goods. We went to the Yoder Center, and the Yoder Center, the Parks and Rec team manned that, and they had 90 participants at the Yoder Center. I was here during that time, and I manned the Dick's Sporting Goods station. We had 241 people come through. It was awesome. It was a fantastic event, and those are just 2 of the 23 pop-ups that we'll talk about a little bit later. So the other one was the website, where we had several different options where you could interact on that website. You could take a survey and answer questions. You could go to a map and drag and drop and really be super specific. And within seconds of making that website live, there were people who were dragging and dropping bullet points on very specific items within the city and making very specific recommendations. It was a fantastic success, and we're very happy to be a part of that and present that. So overall, the city of Lynchburg is very happy with their Parks and Rec system. They love trails. If we heard nothing else through this process, your community loves your trails, and they want a lot more trails. It was really impressive. We also talked a little bit about, people really love the Blackwater Creek water nature area, and interestingly enough, we also found out that 70% of your community does travel outside of the community to access certain facilities. So it's just kind of interesting. They love their local Parks and Rec, but there are some services that aren't provided. We'll talk about that a little bit more. So this is a culmination of one of the pop-ups that, all of the pop-ups. There was 23 pop-ups, and so once we brought this, all the boards back to the office and collected all the data, this is one of their really cool exhibits that we're able to bring back. So in the pop-up sessions, these are the top 5 facilities that were requested by the community. So the farmer's market, they love the farmer's market, want a little more. Paved walking paths, boardwalks, canoe, blueway, fishing. In this, there was a need for a community center, an indoor activity center. That was number 6. In the survey, in the online survey, that was number 1. So just something to keep in mind as we move forward. The next evaluation was the programs. So, okay, we understand that what facilities that the community wants. Now we need to understand how they want to program these facilities. So we also had boards that people could vote for what programs they wanted in these facilities. And the great thing about programs is you can use your existing facilities. You've got this great input from your community on, what these programs need to be. So the top 5 voted on by the community for programs are obviously concerts, movies in the park, gardening classes, art festivals, programs for people with special needs, and the list goes on. It's great. We've got that information on programming, and we'll talk a little bit more about how to implement that program and their plans for that later on. So the common themes. So obviously people love their parks. They want to improve the existing parks we have. They want nature programs and trails. They want new parks in certain areas of town. And we're going through the way that we gathered the data in order to tell you guys where we believe the levels of service need to be improved. And so that's one of the really big things that came out of this. So from a service improvement area, we identified 7 areas that really could use new facilities. And the interesting thing about this is this aligns very well with the Trust for Public Lands 10-minute walk. They looked at specifically how can people in the community access facilities and where are they in relationship to the higher demographic areas. And so it is really interesting to see, based on their, taking their analysis and their recommendations and looking at ours, there were a lot of similarities of what they came up with very different methodologies. So just to go into a little bit more about our gap analysis, this was really the culmination of all of our data. And this is one of the main reasons we call this a 10-year plan, is because communities change. The areas in which communities grow and shrink vary greatly in 10 years. And the goal of this master plan is really to provide an equitable distribution of Parks and Rec benefits throughout your community. We want all of these areas that are growing, and we foresee continuing to grow in the next 10 years, to benefit from Parks and Rec. We want to support and build infrastructure so that people can activate the spaces and really enjoy Lynchburg. So this is really the culmination of all that data. These are the areas. These are the top 7 areas that really could benefit from new facilities and will really help spread the accessibility, the 10-minute walk, all the work that has been done previously that we're trying to build upon is really reinforced by this gap analysis. We're really excited. And in summary, for the recommendations, we're obviously recommending upgrades to individual parks. We heard that people want and need an indoor multi-purpose facility for activities, for programming, and for certain sporting events. Increased trail connectivity. We've got a plan to increase trail connectivity, and that's one thing that you really, the national standards, once a community says, hey, we want to look at trails, then we need to go in and say, okay, what's the infrastructure for trails? How does that work? Has there been a plan for trails previously, and how can we build on that? And it was really easy to come in to a city like Lynchburg and look at the trails, look at the plans for trails, how it's been a focus for trails. And we could start looking at how we can connect this need for new facilities with these existing trail plans and existing trail infrastructure. So we were really surprised about how much on the way to being developed that really was. So I think we were easily able to incorporate that into where the new facilities go. And then obviously expanding the Templeton Senior Center. One thing I do want to mention about the Templeton Senior Center is the use is fantastic. There were almost 400 programs last year alone, and 13,000 people were served through those programs. We'll get into a little bit more why that's important a little bit later on, but I wanted to mention that tidbit. So this is our plan for the first 2 phases of the Greenway. Obviously, these can be broken down into different segments, but we identified and built on previous plans to create the plan you're looking at today. This is what we call the inner loop, and really would help connect all of the new facilities and communities. There's also a plan in the report itself we call the outer loop, which is really looking outward. Is how can we connect Lynchburg to Amherst, to Bedford? And the Parks Department is starting to have those conversations about how that can be implemented, and they're very receptive to how this can be. So we're excited about that as well. One thing to note is programming. There are national standards, again, about how to serve your community. And as we went through and evaluated the final recommendations for programming, we had to take a look at your demographics, your age groups that are served. Is what we're hearing about what your community wants lining up with national recommendations for these age groups? So we just wanted to kind of put this up here to show, you're really wanting to focus on your 13 to 24-year-olds. You want to retain the talent that's coming out of these colleges. You want to focus on how to increase programs so that they want to be part of your community as they graduate. And so we've got items like esports, parkour, outdoor activities, and group activities. You've got great access to water. We think if we can increase that access to water, increase group sports and activities on the water, we think that could be a really, really good benefit for exactly that. And then just reviewing programs, these are again, the top requested programs, your concerts, your movies in the park. These are items that can be accommodated in new facilities, but also in the facilities that you have with the proper staffing plan, which is also in place now. So the goal of programming, just kind of keeping on that programming kick, the goal of programming is really to provide a balance for your demographics. So for instance, your percentage of population for youth is 27.3%. You've got 39.1% of programs geared towards your youth. We think that's okay. You want your youth to have a very wide array of of programs to choose from. You want them to find what they're really good at, what they want to be good at, and we think that's great. As you get into your adult population, 48.6% of the population, you're starting to drop a little bit, which again, not a dramatic drop. People kind of focus as they get older on, they know what they like, they know what programs they're gonna interact with. But then as you get into your senior programming, you find that there's a gap. 24% of your population fits that senior category, but only 13.1% of your programs are designated for the senior group. So that's the reason I really wanted to bring those numbers up for the Templeton Center. There's really a demand for senior programming. They're using the programming, they're loving the programming, but there needs to be a little bit more. And so enhancing the senior center is one of our recommendations. And those are where our recommendations are really based off, is real world analysis of what's happening, national standards for what makes sense for growing these programs, and then that public input to back that up and say, here are the different ways that we've found that this is the right fit. So we're recommending expanding your programming. Your Parks and Rec department is doing a fantastic job of educating the individual communities on what their service centers are providing. You can obviously always build on that. No matter what you do, I mean, they're doing a fantastic job. There's always individuals that need that next level of door to door. Hey, we have this program. We think it would fit you. So we want to encourage that. We want to grow the education of what programs are at these individual community centers. We think it's a wise thing to do. Obviously, there's a recommendation for a recreation center, a new indoor recreation center. And the next thing is the cost recovery assessment. So all of these programs, all these facilities, how are they going to be managed? And this is really a model of how we see the cost recovery system going for these programs. We have to identify the broad areas that serve the most public. And we have to realize that this is where we need to spend our money. And then we have to identify the smaller areas which cost a little bit more, but people will be willing to pay more for. So an example of what would be at the top tier is kind of your cooking classes. You have to buy the ingredients. There are certain people, you have to have smaller classes, so people are willing to pay more to have those cooking classes. But second from the bottom, a good example would be the youth sports. There's a low barrier to entry. We want everyone to come in and have an opportunity to play these youth sports. So there is an opportunity for the city to kind of subsidize a little bit of those programs moving forward. So that's really how we want to think about it. The broader base, the more people that we can reach, the lower the barrier to entry on these events. But as you get more specialized, we do expect the community to, and there's data that backs that up, the community will pay for these specialized events that if provided. So I just wanted to bring this up as a model that the Parks Department does intend to adapt moving forward. The greatest area of benefits has the lowest barriers to entry. And then finally with the CIP, we're calling this the CIP project categories, but this is really a way to rank our recommendations for priority for construction and rehab. So accessibility and general park improvements, obviously accessibility and security is an important thing. Existing park renovations. There's already funds that are marked for Heritage Park and Miller Park to begin that next level of design feature. New park facilities and development, and then finally trail development. So while we're calling this CIP, there's tons of different ways to fund these. There are a lot of different grants that are specific to trails. There is the DRC. There are Senator Newman has earmarked some money for the Parks Department. So it's not all just capital programs. It's really a plethora of different ways to focus and find matching dollars and get these programs and facilities funded. So we're excited about that. And in conclusion, you have a community that loves their Parks Department, and we're excited to help give the Parks Department a vision for the next 10 years. We really think with this document you can open doors and have conversations that you simply wouldn't be able to have. You have a direction for the future of funding, and we feel like the elected officials have a very well supported document that they can really bring and remind and gains and have support from the community on capital improvements for the future. Thank you for your time. Are there any questions?
Thank you. Anybody want to address anything you saw? I guess we're going to get to look at those, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, I'll hand them
Yeah,
out right
I'm
now.
excited about seeing that.
Just a lot to assimilate, and
Yeah.
I know 2 years of work is hard to condense into 10 minutes. So thank you for giving us the idiot Cliff Notes version of it.
Very welcome. We're very passionate about these plans. It's something that every community
Thank
really
you.
needs.
Well, I can just tell you from my experience, everybody who comes to Lynchburg, that's one of the first things they talk about is the trails. And having been somebody who grew up in Lynchburg where it was much more do-it-yourself, let's put it that way. I can appreciate where we come from, and I think it's a phenomenal job. And by the way, the work you're doing on the Blackwater Trail to put the bridges back together, I know you guys feel like nobody cares, but that's awesome work down there.
We're getting there.
I hear it every day. I don't know what's going on down there. Somebody got bombed the other day. I had to turn around. I called 411 to find out what was going on. I don't know what that noise was, but when I went down, there was some serious equipment down there working. So thank you very much.
Yeah, I mean, literally, if I'm out of town and run into somebody, of course, I'll say, whoa, where are you from? And, I say, a place you've probably never heard of, Lynchburg, Virginia. More likely than not, the first thing you're gonna say is, my wife and I, or my boyfriend and I were down there a couple months ago and we loved the trails and the outdoor activities. I mean, it's like, wow. It really is a magnet. I don't know exactly how you measure it from a tourism impact viewpoint. I'm sure Margette Upsher's got some kind of figures on it, but it's got to be the biggest single attraction to bring people in, at least based on my anecdotal experience, into the community, are those trails.
And then,
Now, quickly after that, it's the wineries, but
well,
Rachel,
the
you
other
were
question I wanted to ask was, because I'm sorry.
I don't know if there's anyone from the public to speak, but could we go ahead and open up the public hearing in case,
Sure, yeah.
before
that's
we have
fine.
more discussion?
Yeah. So is there anybody here who wants to talk about this plan or wants to come up and voice their opinions on it? We have anything in email? Okay. Yeah, so we'll close the public meeting, and this is a unique one. I'm not used to this kind of thing. So yeah, I guess we can continue commenting.
I guess I did have a question, and I know it's not the focus of the study, but you mentioned trying to form partnerships with the adjoining jurisdictions. And, I assume everybody knows the biggest opportunity in Central Virginia right now is the space that used to be occupied by the training center. And they're desperately trying to figure out how to connect with downtown Lynchburg and things of that nature. Did you have a chance to assimilate any of those types of possible connections? And they don't, they have a plan, a consultant's plan for what to do out there, and nothing's occurred yet. I mean, it just came out early this year, but was there any consideration taken into how this plan could more actively interact with the space out in the training center?
That's the next step, I believe. So during this plan, we identified areas that would go out and to that area, but now Jenny is having conversations, is that
Well,
correct?
there's been conversations going on about a regional trail, and the trail would come through Lynchburg, but it would connect to Bedford County via Poplar Forest. We have been in contact with them, and they are interested. The city actually has a downtown 2040 master plan. That in that plan is the connection to Amherst across the John Lynch Bridge, turning one lane of the John Lynch Bridge into a linear park that people could drive, ride their bike, hike, whatever across. I don't know if that's ever going to happen or if it's, where it is like feasibility wise, but that was in the design. So those were our two connections. Probably 5 years ago, before the flood, our goal, we had pulled in a group of folks from Bedford, Amherst, Nelson, Poplar Forest, and the city of Lynchburg, and we were trying to put together a plan for a regional trail, like I said, connecting in Bedford, coming through Lynchburg, crossing John Lynch, hooking up with Amherst, Amherst hooking up with Nelson, and Nelson taking it to the Crozet Tunnel. That was the plan. Of course, we got set back because of the flood and all the damage that happened to Creekside Trail. All of our efforts have gone into restoring that. We now have the funding to fully restore the bridges and reroute that trail so it'll be sustainable even if we do have another major flood. So the money is there, the plans are there. Now we're just in the construction phase, that getting permits, getting easements, all that sort of thing. And we've started with that first bridge down, I think the downstream bridge, you all probably have seen that under construction. It's sort of off of Thompson Drive and then head downstream, and that's the first one. But they're all funded now, so that was a holdup previously.
Well, just to piggyback on that a little bit, we've seen a couple of plans. The Dairy plan comes to mind, obviously the downtown plan, where there has been some consideration about particular connectivity to the trail, which is not exactly new part, but could be. I know that particular plan also had a multi-purpose building in it. I don't know if that was part of what was discussed here or not, but my.
I believe the Parks Master Plan incorporates the things from the Darrington Plan and the Tyriana Neighborhood Plan, as well as the Downtown 2040 Plan. Specifically, I was just looking at the Jefferson Park page, and it talks about the new trail connection there. I don't know if the gymnasium is specifically addressed, but
It wasn't, but it ties in that plan. And there is a spur trail that is planned from Jefferson Park down to Creekside Trail. Yeah.
And it may be ahead of the game, because one of the comments that you guys made early on, and I heard emphasized, was this is a vision plan. This isn't a, this is trying to give us some idea where to go, not necessarily what to do. So we may be jumping the gun a little bit, but because I think what's there sounds great. But it just seems, I guess what I'm trying to tie in my mind, having said what I said was, which is completely contrary now, is as we see these other things come through, I just need a nod that stuff's getting filtered in, because there's a lot I don't want to have an opportunity to go by and you guys trying to catch up to it because now you're ready to do something, now the money's there or whatever, if that makes sense.
Makes sense. I will say that the next section of trail that we're working on, we have the plans and the approval from VDOT, is the section of trail from Ivy Creek Park to Peaks View Park. It's called Peaks to Creeks Trail. It's 1.9 miles, and we're still waiting to understand what that funding commitment is going to be. It's an earmark. So Lynchburg has gotten an earmark through Senator Newman's office. The initial estimate is $4.7 million. And we don't know if that includes contingency, and we've got to find out how much they're going to fund and that sort of thing. So
I would imagine a lot of it, to your Creekside Trail comments, has to do with maintaining it too, because you've got, we're kind of at the mercy of the weather. Talk a little bit about accessibility. You hit that a couple of places. Could we talk a little bit about that?
Sure.
And really what I'm asking the question about is, everybody talks about the trails and everybody talks about how great it is. The next thing they talk about is, you guys got some hills there. And, as you think about accessibility, obviously there's wheelchair access that I think of first, but also what kind of things are we sort of doing to deal with just the topography in some of the areas that we're talking about?
So as you asked, part of our recommendations is upgrades to your existing parks. So as part of a big part of these grants, a lot of these grants that are specific to Parks and Recreation are specific to ADA. So we're not allowed, they wouldn't give us the money if we didn't bring these up to 2010 ADA standards. So there's absolutely consideration as we improve these parks, and as new parks come in, it's almost a given these days that they have to meet federal regulations to ADA. But one of the biggest things that we're seeing for grants is opportunities for upgrades and ADA access to the facilities. There are that is one of the. Sure.
I think putting in, for instance, the access from Lincoln School over to the Ed Page Center. I don't know if you've seen that or not. It goes across the old trestle. It's fabulous. It's great. If you're coming down there in a wheelchair, you're going to make the soapbox derby look like, a snail's race. I mean, there's just no way, and there's no way you can get anybody back up. Now, I'm not saying that to complain. Please don't misunderstand, because without that, it makes it so much easier to use the trail. I don't even want to talk about it. But that would be an example of something to look at. How do we deal with something like that? I mean, the terrain's the terrain. I don't know what you would do, but those kinds of things, and I'm using that as an example, not as a criticism, please understand that. But that's an example of trying to build something that now opens up, because it's a huge access. Because, you can't, it's much easier to get the actual parking lot behind the church, but, given the crowding, there's no way you can get anybody in there, and by the time you get the cars in there, if you had a wheelchair, you wouldn't be able to get out anyway.
That's right. I have a lot of experience with upgrading public schools from the 1970s and 60s up to today's standards, and we had that conversation a lot. It's, okay, we have an ADA accessible area at the school, and we have an ADA accessible area to the field. And we are responsible to do our due diligence to see what it would take to provide ADA access between one use and another. Ultimately, what it comes down to in many cases is cost and space. Now, for instance, switchbacks are probably the quickest way that we can get back, but 2 switchbacks a few years ago was running about $65,000 to $70,000 for 2 switchbacks. So we absolutely do our due diligence, but at the end we put that before the bodies that be to tell us, is it okay for a person to travel from one accessible area to another by means of a van or a different means, or is it really something that we want to do? Is it long term? Is our multiple users? Is this a greater benefit than we're realizing? So we provide those evaluations to you when it comes to those points. We won't push. We're not pushing a certain way for accessibility. There's multiple ways to provide accessibility, and we will provide those full evaluations and present those to you for decision.
I would say about the Langhorne Trestle project, that was a VDOT project, and it did meet all of the standards for cross slope and for slope. I think our park service manager wanted to also speak to this.
Yes, it does. All the standards were met with that trail, and we strive to meet all the standards every time. It was actually extremely difficult, that terrain, as you can imagine. As you can see, when it comes down to that curve, how high the trail was actually perched up. That was to meet the standard, but it is at the maximum of the standard. Oh yeah.
Nothing I said is meant to be a criticism at all. I'm simply using it as an example of, because we're not going to have ADA at every single facility either.
Oh no,
I mean,
it's sometimes not feasible.
It's just can't work.
And one of the big things we look at when it's not feasible with the amount of space is to create some of these slopes, you would have to switch back and forth, and it would ruin the terrain. But the betterments that make it better for somebody that's in a wheelchair, less accessible, even a lady trying to go down in a baby carriage, it's a lot better than it was, and that's how we try to look at things sometimes.
Well, the access that you added was huge. I mean, before and after, there's no thing. And I only use that because I think contrast is great. I mean, everybody can understand. And you're right, if you built switchbacks like that, you'd have whiplash lawsuits all over the place, just from people going down. But, we have a unique situation because we do have that topography. And, that's an extreme example. We'll leave that one off the table. But there's a lot of places it's hard to move downtown. I mean, forget the trails. I mean, we always tease about you ought to build some kind of a master trail that goes from like Commerce Street up to say Court Street, and have some kind of Lynchburg killer name associated with it, and have people run that. CrossFit people can start on Commerce Street. People like me can start on Church Street.
We're constantly looking for ways, especially with little connections into neighborhoods like we were talking about Deerington. We're doing one in Timbridge Hill right now where we're going from a earthen trail and we're putting a paved trail in. It was not feasible to meet the ADA grades, but it's going to go from a very poor earthen trail that you definitely could not transverse to something that someone could actually transverse in a wheelchair and get them down to the main trail. So it's the betterments and getting as close as possible.
Right. Well, I think you guys are doing a great job. Again, just adding the parking at Lincoln was huge.
Yes.
But I just throw that out because I do think, you mentioned we have a young population, and that's true until you take the colleges away, and then we get old. And given you don't have to be old to have accessibility problems. We talked about an obesity issue. Anything to take the barrier down is going to improve that.
I'd just like to comment. I really like this plan. One of the things I really enjoyed, I think one of the things I've enjoyed the most in like the last 3 years is the interactive suggestion time we had online about the access, the trails, the activities that we could put into the city. And I thought it was really neat to see how many people engaged in it. So you had mentioned that a lot of people engaged. I like that it's a flexible plan, because I know there's some things of like, boy, if the chips fell the right way, there's things that we could do that actually might take care of some of the slope access, but yeah, I really do appreciate, I'm going to enjoy looking through this. And I think today we're just voting to move this on to City Council, correct? Okay.
We would be making our recommendation to approve or deny as part of the comp plan.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, your work is amazing, and just looking at all the different facets and the research that went behind it is pretty impressive. I sell real estate for a living, and am constantly doing town tours and introducing people to Lynchburg, and two of the top things that I talk about are, the trails, obviously, and the river, because that's, just what attracts a lot of the people. But in the same breath, we have our we've seen the poverty numbers and that demographic, and so improving the parks and improving the facilities and giving more opportunities to our city, population is crucial. So I applaud this, and I think it should definitely be added to the comprehensive plan.
Yeah, I think it's awesome. I make a motion that we do so.
I'll
I
second.
recommend to do so.
Well, battle over who seconds. That's great.
Give it to Chan.
Any other comments before we put it to vote then? All right, so we're going to vote in favor of, we're going to be voting to move this on to the City Council as a recommendation for the comprehensive plan. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Great, unanimous. Thank you for bringing that to us, and look forward to seeing it come to fruition. Okay, our next items, we're going to have two more items we're going to be presenting here. Both are street namings, and the first one is consideration of naming a street in a new subdivision located off Riverside Drive as River Bluff Court. So Rachel, you're just going to share that, and then let us...
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If we could switch over to the laptop up here so that we could get the visual. Frank Good Building Contractors is petitioning to name a new street as River Bluff Court. The street will be located in the Bluffs at Riverside subdivision, which is off of Riverside Drive, and what is currently 76, 200, 204, 208, and 226 Riverside Drive. The city's technical review committee reviewed this petition on November 22nd, 2022, and had no comments of concern. The name is before you today simply for comment.
Looks good.
I like that name. It's my comment.
All right.
I'm just happy to see activity going on back in that
Yeah.
little
I know,
neighborhood.
that one's
Really.
been empty it's been sitting there forever.
I had recently been back in there, not because of this, but because of the visitor person that I know back in there. I kept saying, you need to come back here and look and see. I'm sure you've taken some clients back in there, Kenzie, and I'll be honest with you, I was really impressed. Then when I saw this, I said, boy, there's some more activity that's going to happen. It's really a nice little sort of hidden secret back in there. It's a great neighborhood.
and you can see all the houses and lots that they're gonna put in there, and it's so needed. We have such a housing shortage right now, and so that's great.
And then we'll go to the second one, and that is 7 streets within a new subdivision located off of Graves Mill Road, and the names will be Juniper Place, Jasmine Hill Court, Poppy Court, Iris Court, Marigold Court, Morning Glory Court, and Rosedale Boulevard. A floral collection of streets, certainly.
Love a good theme. TPB Enterprises LLC is petitioning to name these streets, as you just mentioned. These streets would be located in the Rosedale subdivision off of Graves Mill Road, which is currently 1600 Graves Mill Road. The city's technical review committee reviewed this petition on November 22nd and had no comments of concern. Again, the name is for comment. The names.
7 new streets.
Yeah, see that property being developed and most likely it's gonna be a desirable fashion.
All right. Well, then that will go on to the city council, and I have one last thing that I'd like to read, and we have 2 members who have reached the end of their term, and looks like they'll be leaving us, so I wanted to read this resolution, and as a committee, move this forward, and it says, whereas Cham and Dave were appointed to Lynchburg Planning Commission in Lynchburg 2014, and Cham and Dave have been dedicated members of the commission and served conscientiously since that time, and whereas Cham and Dave have posed thoughtful questions, provided valuable feedback, had meaningful discussion, and made many insightful comments over these years, whereas Cham and Dave were instrumental in preparing and adopting the Atlanta Avenue Corridor Study, the Route 221 Corridor Plan, the Downtown 2040 Master Plan, Tyrene and Pleasant Valley Neighborhood Plan, the Deerington Neighborhood Plan, and the comprehensive rewrite of the City of Lynchburg zoning ordinance. And whereas Cham and Dave have diligently provided thoughtful insight and decision-making on dozens of conditional use permit and rezoning petitions to provide for the general health, safety, and welfare of the City of Lynchburg. Now therefore be it resolved by the Lynchburg Planning Commission this 14th day of December 2022 that they express their appreciation and respect to Cham Light and Dave Peralt for their service to the City of Lynchburg, the City of Lynchburg Planning Commission, and the citizens. So thank both of you for your time spent.
And, on behalf of the staff as well, thank you guys for your service. I know that not all meetings go as quickly and as happily as this one. And yeah, we just really appreciate your dedication, and we'll miss you and your insight.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna miss you guys. I didn't realize this was it.
No, we should have prepared you guys more.
Just wait till the next meeting.
Me a little bit.
I said, just wait till the next meeting.
Do we have any new members?
I mean, like,
Electing
can y'all not,
officers.
It's a 3-year
I know, but
appointment
this
term.
was a problem. There's like 4 of us left and 3 vacant seats.
Well,
I believe they may have appointed someone. I'm not positive yet. So
Been on 8 years.
Well, y'all are gonna be hard to replace,
3.
for sure, for sure.
I'm pretty sure I hold the highest percentage for recommending against petitions.
That's important.
It might not be sad to see you go.
We have to read that one off. That can't be a public meeting for us to read that particular
Yeah,
resolution.
I didn't do the
Sorry
math.
about that.
That's all right.
Well, I've enjoyed all 9 of the years, and I've enjoyed especially working with, all this time with Dave. He and I weren't always on the same page on everything, but I think we always respected each other's opinion. And, it's been really, just not the folks here today, but, the members that I've served with in the past, it's really been, I think, a very enjoyable experience, and the staff goes without saying, Rachel, from Tom down, yourself included. It's been a pleasure to work with you all. And I guess Anna's the newcomer to the group, but she's been really responsive whenever I've sent her a note and asked her for anything or anything of that nature. So I'll really miss everybody.
Yep, I very much appreciate the opportunity to serve on it. It's given me a very much stronger appreciation of how the city functions.
Well, I would say that, I think, I tell all my students that service is really important in your community. A lot of people think much more broadly when they think about service, but being able to engage in your community, I think that's really important. I think it's a great model that you all have provided. So hopefully as we see new people come in, we'll see that kind of commitment and willingness to step out on a limb, sometimes do things that aren't as popular, say things that aren't as popular, but do that in the light of service and serving your community.
Motion to approve? Motion to approve your resolution?
Oh, yeah.
I moved
No one was making a motion. I was worried.
to approve it.
Second.
Okay, well, all in favor of this resolution, say aye. Aye. All opposed? No? No one's opposed? That's great. It goes through unanimously. We're missing a person, but 2 people?
I should
Sure,
probably
but-
vote against it, just in the spirit of
You can vote against it, yeah.
be consistent.
And it'll go to
maybe-
council and we'll say it wasn't unanimous.
Maybe abstain? I don't know if there's a conflict there,
Yeah.
Maybe you guys shouldn't vote, I'm not sure.
We'll leave it at that.
Yeah. For the record, I abstained.
Yeah.
I gotta say,
Very interesting meeting.
I've heard of voting for
We had some
yourself,
interesting
but I've
things.
never heard of voting against yourself.
Okay, well, do we have any other, anything else to talk about? Or we're going to have a meeting in January? Middle,
Most likely. No? You don't think?
yeah,
Okay.
the first of
Stay,
the,
stay tuned.
So maybe not the Jones Library in January?
We're still looking at, some of their revised materials, so we'll keep you guys posted as soon as we know about the dates.
Sounds good.
great, all right.
Hope everyone has a happy holiday.
You too.
You too, any motions to leave, or?
I'm making a motion to adjourn.
All
A
right,
second.
all right, well, I'm sure no one's opposed, so everybody have a great day and a nice Christmas.